Welcome to your next great novel. I'm your host, Phil Williams, and today I have romance and erotica author Lynn Burke on the show. Lynn is the ultra-productive author of 38 novels. She's a full-time mother, voracious gardener, and scribbler of spicy romance stories. A country bumpkin turned Bay Stater, she enjoys her chowder and Dunkin' Donuts when not trying to escape the reality of city life. Welcome to the show, Lynn.
Thanks.
Great. It's good to hear from you. Can you tell us a little more about your author journey, how you got started, and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Well, I wrote my first great novel in 8th grade, and
Wow.
yeah, that never hit the bestseller. But no, I've always been a voracious reader, love to tell stories, and I didn't take anything seriously until I actually met Ann Tyler quite a few years ago when I was living in Baltimore. So I met her, and she actually mentored me through my first writing novel experience, I guess you'd say. I don't really know. But she had wrote some letters of introductions to a couple agents for me, Donald Moss being the number one, who tore my manuscript to shreds.
Wow.
And of course, I didn't know who he was at the time.
Was he an agent?
Yeah, big
Okay.
time agent. So I just thought he didn't know what he was talking about because I was very arrogant. And yeah, so it went on from there, and had gotten dozens of rejections of the same sort. And then I finally realized, okay, I don't really know my shit. I need to buckle down and figure out what I'm doing. So it was a couple years after that I decided to go back to it. And I did publish some stuff through some indie publishers under my real name. And then I decided to kind of take a different route and started up a pen name. And yeah, it's been pretty much nonstop since then. So
That's great. Do you think that a lot of authors first start out, do you think that there's sort of an arrogance that, hey, I'm writing the great American novel and then I'm going to have J.K. Rowling money and it's going to be awesome?
I don't know that everyone thinks that way, but I know that when you mention you're an author to people, they think that you're rolling in the bucks when
Right.
it's normally the absolute opposite. But yeah, I think there's a level of arrogance there. There's a lot to learn, and even having been published for quite a few years, I learn new stuff every day. Realize what I'm not doing, what I should be doing, what I've been doing wrong. But with a constantly changing market,
Right.
that there's always stuff to learn. I don't care who you are.
Right.
You either, like you said, J.K. Rowling. I'm sure she's still learning stuff. So yeah.
I think if I didn't start with some level of optimism, I'm not sure. Like,
Yeah.
I think if I knew the whole story about how hard it is to actually be a working author and make a living as a writer, I'm not sure. I don't know for a fact that I would have started if it would said, hey, you're going to need to write 20 really good novels to get to
Right.
the point where you might maybe
Maybe.
make a living if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think I wasn't totally arrogant, but I was definitely overly optimistic for sure.
I think everybody is. Yeah. And that's a good thing because that's what keeps you striving forward. But I think that a true author, a true storyteller is someone who's going to focus on more than just the money. It's a passion. I know for me, the characters in my head and the need to tell their story sometimes is more important than, wanting that best-selling title or, the accolades that some get that most do not.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But yeah, optimism is a must. Because it's too easy to fall in depression if you're trying to make money because it normally just doesn't happen.
So your latest book is Bind Me, Sir. It's book one of your Bonds of Worship series. Can you tell us a little about the series?
Oh, it's my plan is just to have the 3 novella series. It's BDSM, male, female, not too heavy of reading, I think. Stories tend more toward the characters' lives, like the wounds from their past and the healing that they can find through the story, like the character arc. I'm more about that when I write rather than having that external conflict and that type of stuff. So yeah, easy read, short novellas. Give mom the nice little break time that she might need, that she can read in an hour or two, that sort of thing. So
you could finish one of these books in a few hours, you think?
oh yeah. Yeah, depending on how fast you read, could be 2 hours, might be 4 hours, depends on how many kids are hanging on you and interrupting you, needing a snack or needing their snotty nose wiped or that
Right.
sort of thing.
People are divided with their attentions.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the long form book, especially reading, I think more people are starting to listen to really long books.
Yeah.
And maybe they might be more apt to read something that they can get through a little bit quicker. Because I just think attention spans are becoming a more and more of a problem.
Oh, they definitely are. I mean, I prefer long novels, especially from my favorite authors, because, of course, I don't want the story to end.
Right.
And my last editor with Evernight, she, like me, prefers the longer stuff. But it seems like in the romance genre as a whole, that the shorter works are preferred. That was her take on it. I know she's been in the industry for many, many years. But yeah, I think it's just a preference. But audio, it's definitely, I think it's definitely the way to go these days. And I haven't gotten there yet. Can't afford to put my books out there yet like that. But one of these days, we'll keep the fingers crossed. We'll remain optimistic about that.
Yes, remain optimistic about it. Yeah, audio is it's the one part of I read that ebooks actually declined in sales last year, and so did paperbacks, but audiobooks
Audio,
increased quite a bit.
I'm sure. Yep.
So I think
Everyone's on the go. They don't want to sit there. Like you said, the attention span, they got to do it while in their car. They can't read, so they'll listen to it. And yeah,
right.
it's sad.
And I still try to read a book a week, but I can listen to 2 books a week.
Yeah.
Because 2 days a week, as you know, I'm a big time permaculture person, and so 2 days a week I actually have a schedule where I work outside all day.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, so I'm listening to a book almost the whole day. So I'm one of those people that probably listens more than I end up reading.
Yeah. Well, it's perfect for you, though, like you said, working around outside in your land. And I could totally see you doing that. I'm a little bit jealous.
It is nice. Do you have an excerpt from Bind Me Sir?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we're all on pins and needles to hear this excerpt.
Okay. A flick of the lights flooded the room in brightness, and I blinked until he dimmed them enough I could glance around the church's interior. It appeared the same as the first time I had trespassed, dark and seductive, the excitement of the unknown heightening my pulse and breath. Jordan released my hand, and I clutched my arms around my middle as he flipped the switch on the lone electric candle in the front window. To let others know the church is occupied, he explained once he turned to find my brow furrowed in question. He took his time lighting candles around the room and eventually flicked off the dim overhead lights and stood before me. A shudder rippled over me at the look in his eyes, a darker blue like the sky at twilight, full of unknown lurking shadows. He stared at my lips and tugged me close. I dropped my arms to my sides, unsure of what to do but trusting him to tell me. We need to talk about a few things first, okay, love? The pet name, the accent in his low tone, nearly buckled my knees. I managed a nod, swallowing against the dryness in my throat as I stared at his lips. Do you have any experience in this lifestyle? He asked. I shook my head. Are you a virgin? Heat flooded my cheeks, and even though I'd only experienced sex a handful of times, I'd never enjoyed it as the women in the ebooks Lily insisted I read. I shook my head once more, too embarrassed to admit the truth of my lackluster sex life. Do you know what a safe word is? He continued with the questioning, and my face heated even more at memories of the last book I'd devoured the evening before. Like traffic lights, I whispered. A twinkle lit in his eyes. Yes, tell me what each color means. Green means go, I swallowed. Yellow is slow down, I need to think. Red means stop. He nodded. You are in control, Natalie. I will learn your body, your tells, but you decide what will or won't happen tonight, okay, love? He would learn my body. God, yes. I nodded. Tell me. Jordan turned me to face the room, his hands on my waist as he pressed against my back, his chin on my shoulder. What part of this room excites you the most? Gulping, I glanced at the altar. Everything, I whispered, rather than admit to the truth. Instruments of pain? The rack of items, including a crop and flogger, snagged my attention, but I wasn't sure about pain other than the idea of his handprints on my backside. The cross? I eyed the St. Andrew's cross, flinching at the memory of a woman I'd read about being strapped to such a contraption, angry red marks across her thighs and lower back. The bed? Rings on the sturdy post drew my focus, and I licked my lower lip. The altar? My breath caught, nipples aching as I studied the table meant for worshiping God and the ungodly images flashing in my head of being tied down, Open and unable to move, bound for a dominant's pleasure, Jordan's pleasure. His hot breath caressed my ear. You do want to be strapped down to the altar, don't you? I jerked my head in agreement, a million butterflies fluttering my stomach. He steered me closer with his hands on my hips, stopping me right in front of the padded altar. Coils of rope sat atop it, and I gulped at the thought of abrasions on my wrists and ankles. Not that I had any intention of fighting whatever he wished to do to me. Tell me what you want, Natalie, he said, his breath once more hot against my ear. Dare I? I hesitated, embarrassed to admit what I fantasized about. My gaze flitted to the bed once more, and the lengths of black silk draped over the bed's foot. Answer me. I jerked my focus back to the altar and flicked my tongue out to moisten my lips. Bind me, sir. The
Very
end.
good. That's fantastic. Thank you for that.
Wasn't too naughty.
No, it was great. It was great. Hey, I have some horrific scenes in my books. At least in your books, people know what they're buying, right?
Yeah, they do.
No, that was excellent. Fantastic.
Thanks.
Have to check
my
that
face
out.
is all hot and I'm nervous now.
No, that was great. That was great. I think it's an interesting concept, though. The church being this, this fantasy type place. I bet you that's probably true for a lot of people because religion is so tied up in people's psyches a lot of times.
Oh, absolutely. And the idea of taboo is, it's just delicious. Let's face it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, you can't. And I guess depending on how religious you are, that could be the ultimate in taboo for a good chunk of society.
Absolutely.
But is there anything personally meaningful to you about the excerpt?
I don't know. Not super personal. Yeah, I'll admit here I'm completely vanilla. This is not my lifestyle at all whatsoever. I do enjoy reading it. I do enjoy the idea of it. But no, it's definitely more the whole church idea, the whole taboo thing, having grown up in a very religious household. Yeah, that kind of does it for me. So
right.
I have a tendency in a lot of my writings to mention religion just briefly with characters, their backgrounds from it, or if they're being shunned, having, if they grew up in a cult-like church, as I did. It definitely leaks its way into a lot of my books. So in that way, I guess it is personal. Yeah.
Right. So is that why you use a pen name? Because of your religious background?
It is. Both sides of my family, my parents, both mother and father, families are very religious. And I do it more because I don't want to offend anyone.
Right.
Because I love my family dearly. We don't see eye to eye in a lot of things.
Right.
But that's okay.
Yeah, it's every family.
Yeah, it's unconditional love on their part. They know about it. My parents do. My siblings know. I'm sure a lot of my family does know, but I still keep it separate just to not offend. I guess I just love my family too much to smear their name. I don't know. Is that a correct thing to say? I don't know.
No, yeah. I understand.
Yeah, it's just to protect, I guess. Yeah.
Right. I think it's dicey because for me, I write a lot of stuff that I take a lot of things from personal experience. Not everything, obviously. I've killed an awful lot of characters and I've killed nobody in real life, I swear. And I think it's near impossible not to take people in situations from your life and then have them manifest in some ways, even if it's just a turn of a phrase and it might not even be something you're conscious of. And then you have close, family members that read your work and then they're like, well, that's this person. And it's not, that's not the point of it. But, I think that, that can get people upset, but I try not to worry about it. To me, it's art and, it has to be honest and, if it's offensive, I think that's part of it too. But my mission isn't to hurt people's feelings or anything like that.
Exactly.
But, what would you say has been your biggest setback or struggle as an author?
Marketing.
Yeah. Right.
Finding time to write in the summers when the three spawn are home. Yeah, that's definitely a setback for me. I tend to get most of my writing done in the fall.
Right.
When they're all in school. And this is the first week of my youngest being in full-time school. So I actually have, 6 to 7 hours of me time. And of course, all I've been wanting to do is write, which is good because I've got deadlines. But it's definitely finding time for the writing, finding time for the marketing. but that'll change now that they're all in school. But marketing is not something I enjoy. I'd rather just write the stories.
Yep.
I'd rather create than do the business aspect of it. I did hire a personal assistant last fall, and she's been amazing. She's been helping me out a lot, freeing up a lot of my time, because I love details. I'm very organized. I love to-do lists, and I love marking things off. So
yeah, I'm a to-do list person too. You should see mine. I have it never ends, you know.
Right. And every day you're adding to it. But
do you ever write something on your to-do list that you've already done?
Yes, just so you can cross it off.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I do that all the time.
Yep, guilty.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's difficult to know the exact number, but I was looking at this the other day, and I think I've figured out that there's roughly a million authors on Amazon.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, and it's becoming more and more difficult to differentiate yourself as an author.
Oh yeah.
How would you say? But I think we're all, we're human beings. We're all different. How would you say that you're different than the million others on Amazon?
That's something I've thought about a lot, because if your focus is more on making money rather than just writing the stories in your head, you want to figure out what that niche is for you that makes you different. And I'm only just realizing this in the past couple of months. And I had said this earlier to you, that when I write the story, it's more about the character, their life, their arc, the wounds that they have that from their childhood that has made them who they are. And I love to see the progression of a character's story in learning to overcome things, and being more accepting of who they are, whether it's done by themselves or, the love interest in the book, which it normally is in a romance. I definitely tend more toward matters of the heart than external conflict, like mystery, suspense, that sort of stuff. But that's why my logo is Hot Romance, All Heart, because that's definitely my focus is more on the character journey rather than the physical journey, what's going on outside of them.
Right.
So in that way, I think I'm a little different. It's not everyone's cup of tea. A lot of people, they've got to have that suspense element. They've got to have, but I've done a few here and there with that sort of thing, especially with my motorcycle.
Right.
Gang romance. So
but that's a whole subgenre now, romantic suspense, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a big one.
So, and it's good. Good reading. I enjoy it.
So are you mostly an HEA romance author?
I am. Because I'm a sucker for it, and I think that readers as a whole prefer that, especially in the romance genre.
Yes.
An HFN, happily for now, is okay as long as, either following books will give more, or as long as it's, no one's left dead at the end of a book, Phil.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I write HFNs too. They're happily for never.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I forget was it the Lake one of yours that I read.
Stone.
I don't want to give any what's the word? I don't want to give anything away, but yeah, one of your books I read and someone died and I was horrified.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, HEA for sure. Gotta have it.
But everybody loves a happy ending for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, it's the fantasy. I mean, that's why we read, isn't it? To escape reality.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, you have to be realistic and the stories have to be believable.
Right.
Otherwise they're not enjoyable either. But yeah, you've got to make your character smile in the end.
Absolutely. Sure. Even as a thriller author, I've kind of figured out that you have to have, there still has to be a neat little package at the end that's wrapped up.
Absolutely.
Otherwise you get, because I've done a few mixed endings, and my ratings on Amazon are always far lower for the books that have the mixed endings versus the ones that are wrapped up in a nice, neat little package.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
And that's and I still stand by the endings because it felt real to me.
Right.
But I'm also went into it knowing that people are going to be mad.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Well, I think you need to tell a story exactly as it lays out in your head.
Right. You're right.
Some people are planners, some are pansters. I plan mine out. I do character studies. I do scene studies. I do all of that before I even start writing. And
so you're definitely a plotter. So am I.
Absolutely. Oh, I
Yeah.
can see that about you, sure.
Yeah.
You're very
You should see.
organized.
Well, I'm sitting in my office here and there's literally, because I'm doing a trilogy right now, and there's like 100+ characters on the wall, all their
Jeez,
profiles. And
I love it.
the plot outline was 90,000 words.
Oh my
I spent
God.
2 months on characters and plot before I even wrote a word.
Wow.
I mean,
Oh,
it's,
that's impressive right there.
yeah, hopefully it turns into something that, we'll see. You write, I would call it spicy romance.
Hmm.
Um, so to some people, everything you write is going to be controversial. But do you have one book that you would say is more controversial? And if so, why would you say that?
Yeah, I would say Abel's Obsession. It's a standalone novella.
Hmm.
It's about a young Amish man, his religious journey, I guess to religious freedom journey. It mirrors a lot, I think, of what I went through, not in a sexual experience myself, but more of learning to think, his learning to think on his own and
Yeah.
choosing his own path rather than what he was raised in. It wouldn't be controversial in means of like non-consensual sex or taboo of step siblings or anything like that. It would be more controversial for people who are submerged in religion and that's their life. Their faith is what they base everything on. So I would say some of my family members might pick that book up and they might be a lot turned off, I guess. So in that way, it would be controversial. But I
Because
know
you,
people that
you're
have read
taking a bit of a dig at, not, I don't know about a dig, but you're criticizing religion in this book.
it. I wouldn't say that I criticize it. I would just say that I'm more or less stating what I believe is no longer true.
Okay.
And I know people that have read it that have reached out to me with a similar experience, having their eyes, quote, opened, that sort of thing, to how they were raised. But yeah, it was actually, the story came to mind. I was in Pennsylvania visiting my family. I'll keep this kind of short, kind of quick. But my parents live kind of in Amish country. And as I was leaving to come home to New England on a Sunday morning, I pulled up to a stop sign and there was a young man in an open buggy with a woman, and she was holding the baby, and he was leaning forward on his knees holding the reins, and he just looked so miserable. And I smiled just because, make eye contact, just smile, just want to bring some happiness into the world. And he didn't crack a smile, of course not. He just looked like beyond depressed, beyond miserable. And of course, immediately the muse takes off like, well, what made him that way? And what was he thinking in that moment? And,
Right.
he's obviously unhappy in his life and, what regrets does he have? That sort of thing. So yeah, I think I pretty much had the whole story mapped out in my head within the 7 hours before I got home. And yeah, but it hit close to home because it's very similar of things that I've gone through in the past couple of years. So
Wow, that sounds really interesting.
yeah.
I actually read a little bit about there being a controversy amongst like romance and erotica authors about whether or not it's okay to have non-consensual scenes or not. Are you essentially glorifying rapists or not? What do you think about that?
Definitely a touchy subject.
Yeah.
Every person is different. Every reader is different. You can't please every reader every time. Some people don't mind the non-con. Some don't mind some dub-con, dubious consent. But everyone's different. I don't mind it. It depends on the story. It depends on the believability of the characters, what the person is going through. Sometimes, like you said, you just got to be honest. And if that's part of a person's story or part of a character's story that is going to take them where they need to be at the end, then I have no issue with it. But yeah, to each their own. Some people hate it. Some people think that it does glorify, and others are all about it and think it's hotter than dark chocolate and coffee. I don't know. To each his own. That's all I can really say on that.
Yeah. Well, I think books are a lot like music. Some people might hate country music and other people might love it. Some people might
Right?
love rap. Some people might hate it.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that this is better or worse. It's just, about finding your audience. And
yeah, no, that's definitely a perfect comparison for sure.
so like most authors, I'm assuming you do a ton of reading. What do you like to read?
Well, I don't write it, but I tend toward reading dark romance. But it's just to clarify, there's a huge difference between erotic romance and erotica. I think lines get blurred. But erotic is all about the sex, which, that's fine for once in a while. But I write erotic romance, which is centered more on plot and characters and the story itself. And then the sex is just, the whipped cream and cherry on top.
Right.
It just happens to be graphic and, sometimes lewd, but enjoyable. So what was the original question? I'm sorry.
What do you like to read?
What's that?
What do you like to read?
Yeah. So I don't mind some non-consensual. I don't mind some taboo. But yeah, I tend toward the darker stuff just because it's complete fantasy. Now, it's funny because had you asked me 5 years ago before I went down the rabbit hole of writing erotic romance, I probably would have said something different. But I think the more you read, it's like you almost become numb to some things. And so the darker it gets, the dirtier it gets. Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
No, I could definitely see that. It's like, well, at first that was shocking. And then after I've seen it 100 times, it's not so shocking anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can almost see the lore behind it where it might become enjoyable. And yeah, okay. So take this, for example, my religious upbringing. 10 years ago, had you given me the book that I just read 2 times in a row, no lie, the last 3 nights, if you had handed me this gay erotic romance, male, I would have, been horrified and, told you were sinning and going to hell. But yeah, it's probably the best book I've read so far this year.
Wow. Well, it just shows that everybody's kind of on their own character arc, their own journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you could recommend one book that's not your own, what do you think it would be?
I hate questions like this because there's never just one, right? Okay. I actually wrote down Deliver by Pam Godwin.
Okay.
It is a dark romance. It's
Now, what does dark romance mean exactly?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know that I've got a really good description for it other than.
Does dark romance have an HEA at the end, typically?
What's that? Oh, yeah. I would say, yeah, because it's still in the romance genre. You still there's still the HEA 99.9% of the time, but I think it focuses more on like the dark or like maybe basic instincts of humanity. I know a lot of like mafia type stuff, hitman type stuff. Some of that can be classified.
Would there be maybe more violence in dark romance?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, more violence, some dubious consent, definitely the non-consensual stuff. But Delivered by Pam Godwin. It is free. It's a freebie. And that definitely changed my life because, I don't want to give anything away, but it's a good one.
Okay, well, everybody will have to go and check that out. Delivered by, you said Pam Godwin?
Yeah. Godwin. Yeah, if you want to take a little nibble of the dark side. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be good. I'll be shocked the first time I read it, and then after I read 50 more, I'll be like, whatever.
Yeah, then you'll be numb to it.
I'll be numb to it, and I'll have to get even darker. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Sure.
Where can people find out about you and your books?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as author Lynn Burke, and then my website is authorlynnburke.com.
Great.
So easy, pretty straightforward. So
excellent. Thank you for listening to another episode of Your Next Great Novel. Be sure to subscribe. You can find the podcast at philwbooks.com and on iTunes, Stitcher, or TuneIn.